Welcome back everyone to the meta recap for the Valkyria Collab patch. So I know this video is a lot later than I initially promised, but at least I managed to get it out before the end of the season 10 ladder, so that's the silver lining. So cause the patch is pretty much over. Like next Tuesday is gonna be a new update already. So content wise, I think it's going to be roughly the same as the last one, but this time I'm thinking of splitting the video itself into two parts, because the discussion around the new units technically aren't exactly part of the meta recap, but more like a monthly thing that I wanna cover. So, and because they do take up quite a bit of time, and I don't think most people would wanna sit through a 40+ minute video in one sitting, even if they are interested in all the content. But anyways, do note that most of my impressions in this video, and well, technically future videos as well, are formed through the games that I played myself. And since it's currently the end of the ladder, which means most of my games are generally at least Langrisser rank and above. So if you're not in this below, you might observe like some differences in the meta, but I think generally it should be roughly around the same, except for maybe like bronze, which is kind of like anything goes. So to start off, we're gonna have Alicia, and I'm not gonna digress too much into her kit because I've already made a video about that, but basically just to summarize, she's a unit with high situational mobility, but it's not very difficult to trigger. She just needs to be able to run through either an allied or enemy unit. And her 3C is a 1.6 time Dispel 5 single target skill that does a follow-up AoE, so kind of like a budget sword soul, because it does defense down instead of like a more major debuff like heal block or unbuffable, but it's a solid skill overall. Then she possesses a small displacement AoE in her grenade skill that can be useful for breaking stall teams or just pushing units away from their tank in general. And she has minor support capabilities with her accelerated 8 plus King's Crown combo. So, I say combo, but one is gear, one is passive. So yeah, it's just a little bit of support in that sense. And she just has random self-sustain throughout her skills, like her act again heals her for 50%, and her 3C pretty much heals her back to full, as long as you're not heal blocked because they don't dispel. So for my impressions about Alicia, I think just based on my impressions when I actually get to pick her, she's actually a better unit than I expected, considering that she's losing a total of 2 maximum mobility from not being 5-star yet. So -1 from her initial move, and then -1 after her act again. And my most recent replay actually showcased how absurd her mobility can get, so do check that out if you haven't. So generally she's 3rd, 4th pick I find for now, but I think that can probably change depending on the matchup. So similar to Archon, I think she fares better against aggressive matchups rather than defensive matchups. So don't pick her into like some Hilda or Bernhard team and then complain that wow, Alicia is so bad, she doesn't do anything. Well, she's better against aggressive trade matchups. And generally I find that she will usually play at least, I wouldn't say like game winning or major, but she will generally do something, like she'll secure a good kill usually whenever you pick her. So I think in that sense, if you compare her to Archon, I think Alicia is actually a much better investment, and she's also less map dependent. So, and I actually encountered less than 5 Alicias throughout the entire month, so I'm not sure if people are just skipping her completely in favor of Oboro and Azusa, which is coming out next Tuesday, or maybe they put her but they're not willing to play her at a lower star level. So as for her synergies, I find that, not really I find, she just does have synergies with these two group of units. And the first one of them is being mobility supports. Well, technically everyone benefits from mobility supports, but Alicia benefits like in a greater sense, especially if you look at IBC, which provides an actual mobility buff rather than teleport from TJS. So most units that IBC supports get boosted from good threat range to great threat range, but in Alicia's case, she gets boosted from great threat range to how the fuck are you gonna run away from this threat range. And the second group of units that work well with her are what I like to call stepping stones, which is just basically anyone that kind of just stands in front of her and lets her proc the +2 or +3 mobility from her talent. And then in Wetham's case, he leaves a sword in the middle of the map when he initiates, and Alicia can just bounce off that one, can just run over it. And even if you're being generous, right, at 5 stars, if you have a friendly unit to bounce off if you run in a straight line, her mobility is 6, which is 3 from her base and 3 from her talent. So it's 6 plus 2 with a 2 range attack, which is 10 range, which is actually equal to Kyra, except for the fact that Alicia doesn't ignore guard. So this is without considering her getting any extra mobility after acting again from typically enemies because you're on the other side of the map, which can go up to 3 additional steps. And getting any mobility that in that way just makes her even more likely to be able to be near enough any enemy units to get that secondary boost. So moving on, now we have Selvaria, which is the second banner unit for this update, and this is probably just going to be like 5+ minutes of just me dumpstering on her. I don't know, I didn't really rehearse and count how long this is going to be, so to start off, I'll briefly describe what she actually does, which is sort of like a Zerida clone. So a 3C is a 2-part skill that kind of turns her into a sniper, so she charges and then next turn she shoots. And then for Zerida, she has to run in to perform her attack, whereas Selvaria can just, stay in place and just shoot from there. She gets bonus, like basically she can't move, but then she gets bonus unit range, so it's basically the same as running in and attacking, except she gets to do it from where she already is. Then other than that, she has a weird buff skill that is basically kind of like mass attack, protect, resist in one, but actually that's about it. She has nothing else worth mentioning in her kit. So I'm gonna talk about some of her problems because frankly no one is playing her at all. I've never seen a single one, and for good reason. First off, she has probably one of the worst talents I've seen in recent memory for SSR units, and this talent is almost as bad as normal Die Hard, so pre-SP. So crit rate and crit damage is okay for an assassin, but there's no attack boost at all, no damage increase. SP Die Hard also has a crit rate and crit damage talent, but the ball game is nowhere even close because you consider base stat difference and utility difference. Like Die Hard does a lot of other things, like he can buff one other female unit for 4 turns, and he has a stun, and all sort of different things. He has like built-in self-healing, damage reduction, all that stuff. And the second part of her talent is literally useless because what it does is it deals fixed damage equals to like 1.5 times her attack to all enemy units that end their turn within 5 blocks of her, provided they're at full health. Like the 5 block range on the fixed damage already has 0 synergy with her long range design, and then they add on that full HP requirement on it. I don't know why. So just look at this. The first one is Selvaria's talent. Like seriously, the latest SSR unit in 2022. And the second talent is from Roga, which is a launch R unit. The second part of her talent is literally useless, so essentially she has 10% more crit chance and crit damage than fucking Roga. Like, why? Why do you do this? Other than that, she also has terrible base attack, which is at 542, which is roughly the same as EA from like season 2. I think EA has 540 the last time I checked, and she's an archer unit. And she's basically essentially forced to run Stinger because of how bad her damage is. And because she's running Stinger, you're probably gonna be looking at like 1.1 to 1.2k attack at most. Like, so against bulkier units, she just doesn't have enough attack to go through it, even with the Stinger's defense ignore. So she pretty much also has no damage increase, which ties into my next point, where, I say pretty much no damage increase, but she technically does have 20% from her 3C when the opponents are at exactly 9 blocks away. If they're less than 9 blocks away, like nearer to her, so less than 9, she even gets a fancy penalty that goes up to 35%, and I didn't bother researching how that scales exactly. because it's not really mentioned anywhere. It's not like a per block thing or anything. But I didn't bother looking into it because that penalty could not be there and she would still be kind of shit, I think. So, you know, it's just a straight up penalty. And other than that, her turret form, so after she charges, it completely roots her in place. You cannot move her, you cannot displace her with like Angelina or anything, you can't even teleport her with TJS. So it's just really easy to count her range after she sets up. So you just, you know, count 9 tiles and you either stay out of it or you just run so far into it that she just gets minus 35% damage. Yeah, minus 35% damage. So unless you pair her with some kind of act again, I would say it's pretty challenging to hit someone exactly 9 blocks away. So it's already very hard to use in the current meta because having a 1-turn downtime before she can actually attack makes her very predictable and slow, which is the primary reason why Zerida fell off a cliff in terms of her viability. So even her buff skill that I mentioned initially is just basically a glorified mass attack that doesn't give silence immunity, because honestly you're never gonna use the other parts of that skill, like buffing defense and death and crit rate. I don't know, like most people that want to crit already have enough crit rate that additional crit rate boost wouldn't really help. So in fact I can't really think of why you would use her over Zerida, so she's just as slow. But at least Zerida has a guaranteed damage increase on her Alhazard skill. She actually has passives that actually help her kill range in Backstab and Bloodbath, and an actually good faction buff. Meteor is a pretty good buff to have nowadays because, you know, all the assassins. So if barely anyone is playing Zerida anymore, why would you ever consider Selvaria? So all these factors combined really makes you wonder what went wrong in the Zilong character design team, or if they have a character design team at all. Like maybe they're just allergic to earning money from like Collab Valkyria fans. Unfortunately, we may never know. Anyways, that will be the end of the first part of this video, and I'll cover the other stuff like the meta and the individual units in the second part of this video. Thank you guys for watching, see you in the next one.